Good evening, class. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Today, we are discussing Chapter 5, a lesson on elasticity. I can't keep that up the entire time. Chapter 5's article, Customers and Changing Costs, discusses the relationship between key input changes, i.e. changes in production cost, and consumer demand. As key input decreases, companies are forced to determine how much of the cost savings get pocketed or passed down to the consumer. Inversely though, increases in key input can lead to decreased company profits or increased consumer prices, thus negatively impacting demand by an amount described as elasticity. Elasticity is the responsiveness of one economic variable as the result of a change in another. Another way of putting it is it's like saying elasticity is how much the ratio of production cost to revenue is willing to change when faced with another change in an economic factor. Inelastic demand curves result in more proportional changes in price when compared to changes in production cost. It's like saying that if the cost to produce one item were to decrease by half the amount, then the price that consumers see and pay for it will also decrease by half the amount to maintain that same ratio. Question 1 under the review reads, based on your reading of Chapter 5, elasticity in the article above, what factor would you think determines how firms can pass on costs or retain profit shares from sales of a product when key input prices fluctuate? The text cites technological advances in aspirin production, which drastically increases the production efficiency. The technology used saves a lot of money in the long term, but could cost a handsome amount up front. This would be the biggest factor in how much savings can be passed down to the consumer, depending on if, and if so, how, the said aspirin company can afford to implement this technology. Question 2 asks, are aspirin and coffee likely to have an elastic or inelastic demand curve? Coffee is likely to have an elastic demand curve because there is more competition and ways to purchase coffee. You can get coffee at a cafe or wholesale by the bag, through grocery stores, or ordering it at a restaurant. Aspirin, on the other hand, is likely to have an inelastic demand curve due to the lack of competition and ways to access aspirin when compared to coffee. Question 3 states, looking at the figure above, what do you conclude? Which demand curve, elastic or inelastic, is more beneficial to consumers in terms of price decrease, and why? Figure 1A is more beneficial to consumers because the price decrease is more significant. With a strong inelastic scenario, the price decrease is directly proportional to the decrease in cost of production, like stated earlier. With a strong elastic scenario, it is most likely to do the complete opposite, where there is a minimal decrease in cost when compared to the change in production cost. In conclusion, consumers save more money when a demand curve is inelastic. Number 4 states, looking at the figure above, what do you conclude? Which situation could lead to a fall in sales revenue for producers with the discovery of new technology? Why are producers still inclined to implement the new technology in the production process? A substantial cost for the implementation of the new technology would lead to a fall in sales revenue because that's more money being spent. However, the long-term efficiency in the technology would incline a company to implement the advancement into their process. The change would cost X amount up front but save Y amount later, which allows them to compete. Question 5 states, since the demand for food is generally inelastic, which of the two graphs would you apply to the market for agricultural products? Please explain what would happen to prices and quantity. If there is a surge in production, the quantity would increase while the prices would decrease. If there's a decrease in crop supply, prices would increase while product quantity would decrease. Here is the graph that would go along with this the most. So I hope you found this very beneficial, and I'm sorry I couldn't keep up the very serious acts. I'm not much of a serious person. So have a great day and enjoy Black Swan. Ooh.